This episode is brought to you by Vaulted. Launched by McIlvaney Financial Group, with Vaulted, I literally just tap a button and bam, I own physical gold stored in a professional vault. I can also take delivery at any time, extremely simple and less expensive than any other method. The do-it-yourself way to buy precious metals. Click on the promo link in the show notes or go to vaulted.blbvux.net/coffeeandamike. I mean, look at how easy this is. The Vaulted app on my phone, I can access it at any time. Matt Smith, good to see you again. And I've been saying this. I've been saying this in my last couple of conversations. You know, some people think they thought at the election that things were going to calm down and everything would be good. And I don't know about you. I'm finding there's so much to talk about right now. And what we talked about last month with the Mar-a-Lago Accord and Sovereign Wealth Fund and whatnot is one of the most interesting stories out there. And I still think that's up there today.
I agree. I think the economic story, well, first of all, happy to talk to you again. Thanks for having me back. The economic story is the story that affects all of us. So to me, these things are the most interesting thing and probably the most important thing, and also the most difficult thing to understand, because I think it's intentionally confusing. I agree. This is the stuff that concerns me. All the problems that the United States had, and during the COVID era, during the Biden era, all the problems. I was like, even if these get resolved, the economic issues are still there. And so we are still going to face an enormous difficulty at some point. And it seems to me that the Trump administration, we talked about this a lot last time we spoke, the Trump administration understands this and that they are doing what they can to try and head it off, and it's going to result in a complete reset of the system, I think. And it's not going to be easy for anybody that's involved with it, whether it be China or the U.S.
So we sit here today, it's April 3rd, and April 3rd, 10:30 Pacific Arizona time, and you and I spoke last month. Yesterday, tariffs went into place. Today, as I'm looking right now, the stock market was down a little over 1,300 points on the Dow. S&P down a little over 200. What has changed since our conversation for you of how you feel, if anything, from last time?
How do I feel? Well, I'm more worried, I think, than I was last time, because last time what we talked about was much more theoretical. And I see now it's actually, we have a lot of evidence that's being put into practice. Before there were these on and off, I think when we spoke last, it was like February 11th. And there were on and off again tariff threats that were out there. But most of them thought, really, it's a bluff. That he's just doing it for various, whatever. It's just Trump being Trump. But I think you can start to see the picture come together more clearly. The plan that was rolled out yesterday, the tariff regime, is pretty intense. And you have to understand that the tariffs that were announced were on top of other tariffs that are already there. So the existing tariff on all Chinese goods now is 54%. 54%. And another way to think about these tariffs, like you can say, hey, it's good, it can help reindustrialize America. That's true. It could lead to that. It's going to take a lot of time. A lot has been done on it, actually, and I have this long list of companies making investments in the U.S., and it's impressive. It really is. But it's going to take time. I think but one way to look at it, it's like, how we've had this embargo on Cuba forever, where we don't allow goods in, or, and don't allow Americans to trade. Essentially, what we've done is we've kind of put an embargo on the U.S. It's another way to think about it. We're essentially trying to keep goods out of the U.S. We're doing it to ourselves. And I can totally get the rationale behind it is necessary. But to call it Liberation Day is hilarious. I mean, it's not Liberation Day, it's Embargo Day. The U.S. is under embargo, and the response to it is it's could likely escalate from here. I mean, there are things like, for instance, there's this one thing that he's talked about recently is secondary tariffs. So, we don't like Venezuela, we don't like Russia. So if you are buying Russian goods, if you're buying oil from Russia, as a penalty, you could get an increased 25% tariff. So we know for sure that China gets oil from Russia. They also get it from Venezuela. So that gives it, based upon Trump's, what he stated, that could increase the tariffs by another 50% on Chinese goods. So let's the embargo could get quite stiff, and ultimately, there's this $1 trillion of money that leaves the U.S. because of our trade deficit every year, and their goal is to get that $1 trillion here, to get it spent here, and in their simple formula on all of it is that would it would let's just say if that $1 trillion were spent here, our GDP would go up a lot. It would be very positive for our GDP the way it's calculated. So, and not that GDP calculations mean all that much. I mean, like for instance, our GDP has gone down because of the mass importation of gold. Actually, that actually causes the GDP to go down by 2 percentage points. How much gold has come into the country? So, GDP isn't the end all be all, but anyway, the goal is for that $1 trillion to be spent in America.
What are some of the companies that you've listed that you've written down that are making the commitment here? I know Hyundai is one of them.
Yeah, I mean, Trump mentioned some of them yesterday in his speech, but there's other ones. I mean, so he mentioned Apple with 500 billion, TSMC with 100 billion. I mean, think about it, your iPhone now is going to be 54% more expensive. I think these go into effect April 9th, I believe. So it'll be 54% more expensive. I mean, they're already expensive. So Apple has a real incentive to build them here. TSMC, Eli Lilly doing drug manufacturing here. Honda was going to build a plant in Mexico. Now they're building it in the U.S. Siemens is spending, just $250 million. SoftBank's for $100 billion, $20 billion for shipping and logistics. Schneider Electric's spending like another 700 million to expand U.S. operations. This group called Smiths Group, they do semiconductor testing devices. I had never heard of them, but they're expanding operations here. Obviously, NVIDIA, Kia, Johnson and Johnson, even like a company that makes toys, is shifting more of their operations here. So, it's working in that regard. And I mean, it's great to see that. I think there's other ways that maybe you could have accomplished the same thing than this, but Trump's plan is working in some regard. And one of the other things is that one key aspect they have to do is devalue the dollar. We talked about that a lot, right? They have to devalue the dollar. So they've devalued the dollar. This is just since February 11th. And I wrote down these numbers before today's market action. And they've only, it's before today. But, the DXY, which is a measurement of the dollar compared to a basket of other currencies, it went from 108, now it's 102. It's actually below that now. Gold went from, I think it was $2,900 when we talked, now it's well over 3,100. So, the dollar has depreciated a quarter, in relation to gold, and it's depreciated relative to foreign currencies. Those are two of the main objectives of what they're trying to accomplish. I think it's just getting started. I think we could see the DXY go a lot lower, actually. And I definitely think that gold is going to go a lot higher from here. So they have to, I mean, it's this weird situation where actually, for the first time in my life, it seems like the federal government needs the price of gold to go up. There's all kinds of talk and a lot of evidence that there's been an active gold suppression for years and years. But now they need it to go up.
So how much more do you anticipate they'll devalue the dollar?
A lot. I think When we talked last, I think I threw out the gold target at like $21,000. So, at that rate, it'd be like a 90% depreciation. I mean, I think that they've got to depreciate the dollar by 90% over time. And it'll probably be relative. I mean, they really need to do all this within Trump's administration. So he's got 4 years, and that's tough to do. That's very tough to do. But and the hope is that they can actually that wages get driven up at the same time, and so like people's standard of living doesn't go down, but the dollars that they're earning are going to be worth a lot less.
And you and Doug have talked about this on your show that, and correct me here if I'm saying it wrong, but this could be the last bull run on gold.
Yeah, well, the idea behind that, what Doug said that to me the first time, some early last year, I guess it was, and it really stuck out to me because, like just as kind of a profound statement. But the idea is that at the end of the damage that they're causing in reordering the global economy and the monetary system, the disorder that's going to be created by all that, that there will be no choice but to underpin the global trade and monetary order with gold. That gold will come back in as a monetary metal that will be used by countries in global trade. So if that's the case, then the arbitrage, it once was true that you could go and you could take $35 worth of notes and you could go and you could exchange them for an ounce of gold. In that environment, gold doesn't go up, like it's fixed to the currency. And we'll return to that again, but I think the numbers that we return at will be something more like, I don't know. There are numbers that go from 20,000 on the low end to well over $100,000 on the high end for an ounce of gold. But ultimately, it could be, once it's exchangeable, redeemable again for gold, which I think they'll have to do that, once this is fully washed out, it'll be a lot higher from where it is today.
Well, and yeah, it almost sounded like the last stand for gold.
It's the opposite of that, though. It's
Okay.
that gold is no longer right now you can take advantage of the mispricing of gold. That gold is undervalued in the by the market. So when gold is undervalued by the market, then if you can buy it, and then as the market starts to recognize its value, then you can profit on that arbitrage essentially. But when the dollar is fixed to gold, there can be no arbitrage on it. So does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah. The other thing too is I still am not grasping how crypto will play a part in all this, or
Well,
Bitcoin.
ultimately, there's no doubt. I don't know about Bitcoin. I don't know how Bitcoin goes into this exactly. It doesn't make sense to me what they're. This is the one thing. It's very clear. They are not being clear about their plans. Now, some of this they've clearly articulated, like we talked about Stephen Moran's paper where he talks about restructuring the global trade system. We have Scott Bessent's comments about we're entering a Bretton Woods like moment. The Bretton Woods moment was like the you know the basically establishment, the fixing of foreign reserves for global trade. We're entering a phase like that. So we have that from him, and there are other comments from the administration, but all these so that give us make it clear the direction they're going with some things. But in terms of like again, how exactly the sovereign wealth fund is used is unclear. We get more and more ideas about it over time as they discuss it in greater detail. But many things are still unknown, and exactly how Bitcoin fits into this. I mean, the Bitcoiners really want the federal government to go out there and buy Bitcoin, and with the idea that if they buy it, then it's going to appreciate so much, so it could essentially wipe away the federal debt eventually, because it's going to go up to 1 million a coin or 100 million a coin. Who knows? Um, the and the problem with that is that what happens when the government sells to actually pay off its debt? How does that work? Then it would totally crash the Bitcoin. the fact that 90% of it is held by whales right now. Those whales, yeah, they get liquidity if the government buys, gives them a chance to cash out. But for something to be a reserve currency of some kind, it has to be distributed. Meaning other people, both parties in trade would have to have it. So like right now, China has a huge amount of gold. Russia has a huge amount of gold. Germany has a lot of gold. Italy's got a lot of gold. France has some gold. A lot of countries in the world have gold. So if we're trading with those countries, then we can balance the accounts between the two. When we have uneven trade, we settle in gold. And but since not every nation state has Bitcoin, and since most of the Bitcoin that's out there is out there already, and not widely distributed, it's hard to see how that ends up being the underpinning of global trade. So I'm not saying there's not going to be a role for Bitcoin, and as a speculative asset, I've been a big supporter of it. I think it's great, but it's hard to see how we get to that point because assuming we're ever going to trade with the EU in the future, they got to have gold or they got to have Bitcoin to underpin it all. It would have to be there. And sure, they can eventually acquire some, I guess, but I don't know. But crypto is going to play a role. There's no doubt that crypto itself will play a role. Like even the global trade that goes on, the settlement of these of trade between countries will be conducted over the blockchain to keep track of those transactions, and then they'll actually settle up when necessary by actually moving gold when necessary. But so you can see that as part of it. And we're going to have digital money, and digital money not much more sophisticated than the digital money we have now. There's no doubt about it. It does make sense. I mean, one of the projects I'm considering doing here in Uruguay is a gold-backed digital currency because I want more of my neighbors to own gold and to be able to use it in trade. And honestly, it's totally unmanageable if people are walking around with even 1/10 ounce coins. It's just unmanageable to do trade because you can't make change in it. You can't do exact amounts. But if you have these coins in a place and they are, your digital version of it is redeemable, but you can exchange it with others just in digital form, pay the exact price on a product, for instance, with digital currency, then it makes a lot of sense.
Would you do it from a digital standpoint, as a Venmo trading, for example, like, neighbor down the street?
Yeah, you'd have, there'd be an app associated with it, and then you could just send it into someone else's wallet. Yeah. But it wouldn't use Venmo or any of those existing payment rails because then it would be considered like a banking thing rather than just an asset exchange.
But something similar to that, though.
Yeah, just making it super easy. You can send it anywhere in the world, and anyone would be able to redeem it where we have it stored. And initially, I'm only concerned about where I am. Like life is lived locally, so I don't want a global solution. I want a local solution. That's where I'm focused.
How hard has it been to create that or launch it?
Yeah, I haven't started it yet. I've done all the due diligence on it and understand the legal ramifications of it, and was discussing it with a potential partner this morning again. So it's been something I've been thinking about for about 6 months and trying to figure out the best way to do, and then trying to find the time, to do it. Because I don't think it'll be a big money maker. I just think it's something. I'm like there are preppers and then there are extreme preppers. I'm on the extreme prepper side. I mean, I have a farm. I produce my own food, my own energy. I'm a very, prepper evolves from like stockpiling shit to being totally not dependent on any other individual for anything. It does evolve that way. But ultimately, like we do exchange stuff with people, and there's a local bakery, and we trade watermelon or whatever we've got from our garden for bread from her all the time. We do barter, but it would be a lot better if we could do something more sophisticated than that. And I think gold is the way to do it. Plus, I like changing people's attitude about gold and them understand, how powerful it is to own it.
Well, this sounds to me, once you get this going locally, there's an opportunity to do this locally all over the world.
Yeah, and there are services that do it. actually. The problem with them is because the way they're set up, you could be debanked from them just like you can in any other bank. But so I wouldn't do anything that falls under any banking regulations at all. And it's a little complex how you have to do it to structure it that way. But I want it to be something that you don't have to worry about being debanked and that is easy to redeem. You can because that's the key. These things you have to be able to walk into a place and walk out with gold. If you don't want the tokens anymore.
And you might be one of the smartest friends that I know with all this.
We'll see if it works first. It's just an idea I've been thinking about because I thought it'd be cool. But again, this is just like taking prepping to like another level. Okay, I have gold, but if my neighbors don't have gold and the people I buy from don't have gold and they don't understand gold, it won't do me any good.
I mean, I have a lot of ideas too, Matt, but not one of them is creating an app so I could trade, via barter gold with my
Well,
local community. So hats off to you, my friend.
well, thanks. We'll see if I can get there. Time
What,
is the key.
what about, so do you envision then some type of gold crypto combination instead of a gold standard, it would be a gold/crypto? And how would
It'll be
that
the same.
work?
It'll be the same. Basically, eventually, so if you take, let's say, post this era of chaos that we face with the reordering of the system, then what happens is that the state will fix gold to the dollar at some exchange rate. And so once that's fixed, it'll come, but that's post chaos era. Well, and at that point, you rather than exchanging dollars, you'd call them dollars, but you're sending them digitally from one to another, but they're always redeemable then in gold. And in the near term, though, there's lots of interesting things that are happening around this. I mean, there are several states that have passed laws making gold legal tender, and all that's really doing is validating what the Constitution says, But and Utah in particular has gone much further than others. They passed a bill through the House and Senate, which said that companies who contracted with the state could opt to be paid in gold or silver, so from the state. And it makes a lot of sense for Utah because they actually produce a lot of gold there. They have gold refineries there. They have a nice Brink storage facility there. So, it made a lot of sense for them. The governor vetoed it just the other day, but it'll get passed because it was like overwhelming. So it'll end up getting passed anyway, despite the veto. And there's been no explanation as to why he vetoed it. But ultimately, but the way they envisioned it is that they would contract with a third party to develop an app that would facilitate all these payments between people within the state, between the state and the people they contracted with, and between private parties. So, these ideas are out there, and they will happen. They already are happening. There are apps right now where you can do this already. And your gold is stored in a Swiss vault, supposedly allocated, which is very important. And redeemable, but you have to have a lot of it. And basically, they're doing probably kilobars is the smallest that they would redeem for, which is now over $100,000 for a kilo bar. But it's happening. These things exist, and so there's plenty of templates for us to follow here.
Where does silver play into all this?
Yeah, silver's different, though. The thing is, in a way, the problem with silver as money is that it's too valuable to be money. It's so useful and it's so useful in batteries. It's useful in solar panels. It's useful in a lot of electronics functions as it's an industrial metal first and foremost at this stage. And using it, I mean, the great thing about gold is that while it's beautiful and it's something that, yes, that humans have a natural affinity toward, if you were if you're collecting stuff in your home, you would end up, and that you might use later, you'd collect gold because it's beautiful, but you wouldn't ever use the gold. So the gold kind of ended up being something as like a store of value because it didn't have any other real purpose in the world. that was more beneficial than using it as simply a storage of value. But silver is, doesn't meet that standard. And then you have like platinum and palladium, they've talked about in the same category before as well. But they're also used in industry. So they're more valuable actually in use, especially in this electronic era that we live in. It just makes more sense to use them in industry. But I do think silver, like I'm more bullish on silver going up than I am on gold. I mean, I think that I think it's going to explode higher. It's going to trade a lot higher.
What would you tell somebody who's say they have X amount of dollars to buy gold and silver on a percentage standpoint? How would you break it up?
Well, I can't, I don't give financial advice.
I was going to put that disclaimer out there
I'm
before
just a
you
dude.
responded.
Um, I definitely own more gold than I own silver. Part of that is because I see it as savings. So, if money that you want to make sure retains its purchasing power, gold. So having savings in gold makes a lot of sense. Um, from a speculative point of view, for risk capital, and I don't think it's that risky of a bet today, but for a much more volatile potential upside, definitely silver. So, the question is, how do you buy it? It's like this is a problem with silver. You have to have a lot of it. I mean, if you have $100,000, you want to buy silver. I mean, this is a problem. I mean, it takes up a lot of space. $100,000 of gold is, in something that's about the size of your iPhone. You know,
That just
so
went
it's
up.
it's a lot.
That just went up 54% today. Your iPhone.
Exactly right. Not even close to that much in gold, though. What gold that size is worth. So I don't know. The question is, how do you buy it? So the best way to buy it, probably, I think if you're just gonna trade silver, is probably it's uh it's a spot. It's called the Sprott Silver Gold Trust. It's PSLV is the ticker for it. I trust Eric Sprott, who's the guy who started it. He's a silver bug, I guess. And they actually have the silver there. And you can't really say the same is true of the other ETFs where they claim to have silver. So yeah, that's probably the easiest way to do it. But I like the miners. I think that's the better speculation, honestly. If you're going to speculate in gold and silvers with the gold miners, gold and silver miners, and the easiest way to do that, there are ETFs for for buying these. GDX, which is the large gold miners index. Last I checked, it was up 35% this year. So 35% in one quarter. And it's super cheap still. So I think that could go up a lot. For junior mining stocks and by the way, we talk about all this stuff in our newsletter, which if people want to subscribe, it's at crisisinvesting.com. And any knowledge I have on any of this comes from Doug. And I'm telling you the easiest way to buy these things with like this. But there's a junior mining index, which is more speculative. Smaller junior mining companies. It's GDXJ is what that one is. That's one way to play it if you want to be speculative with gold. And then there's silver mining ETFs too. I think SIL, I believe, is the silver mining miner index, and then there's SILJ for the junior silver miners. And those have been very, very disappointing to a lot of people where their performance so far. But the biggest thing but they will explode. Like I have no doubt about that. I think they're really going to go up. The truth is that nobody cares about gold yet. No retail investor cares about gold yet. The people that are buying gold are central banks. So as soon as retail wakes up to it, we're going to see a different kind of move in the price of gold, and we're going to see also a different kind of move in these gold stocks as well. And it's going to be, I think it's going to be wild. 35% for the first quarter of the year is going to be like the tiny.
Well, it doesn't sound like this is that far off from hitting the retail investor.
Yeah, that's true. But so many people, over the last 6 months have been selling, and that's what you hear from retail dealers, that they've been buying back a lot more than they've been selling. So there's something in this, and people in the retail investor psychology still, they haven't quite gotten their mind around it yet. And I think a lot of it is, a lot of the speculative parts of that would normally have gone into the gold miners has gone into Bitcoin. So that's certainly sucked some oxygen out of the room. But yeah, it's definitely coming back. And also the other thing is these gold miners are so tiny, their market caps are so small in the grand scheme of thing that even if a little bit of capital goes into them, they explode. So, and even while all those, we saw the broader markets going down over the last couple of months, the miners have been going up, so, and it's because that's just because people are realizing it. I mean, I guess I could check what the S&P is compared to gold miners so far this year. I said gold miners are at, like I said, are up like 35% so far. I don't know what the S&P is for the year. Let's see. S&P. I'll have to check somewhere else. But yeah, so the whole thing is that I expect a big capital rotation out of these high flyers, out of these tech stocks that so much money has gone into, and it'll rotate into stuff that we actually need to reindustrialize America. Real stuff.
I was watching or following. I follow a guy on X, a financial guy, and he was talking about. I haven't had a chance to speak with him or even see what the rationale, but he was anticipating gold to crash.
Well, there are hardcore deflationists who really believe that, gold could really go down as part of a deflationary cycle. And that's quite, I mean, if you did have real hardcore deflation, everything would go down. But this is the thing about gold. The relative purchasing power of gold would be protected. So, like, here's the thing, gold going up isn't necessarily a good thing. I mean, gold's 3,100 today. When gold was 1,500, was the state of the world better? Yes, it was better at 1,500 than it was at 3,100. Well, when gold's at 5,000, the state of the world will be worse. If it gets to 10,000, it will be much worse. So, it going up is a double-edged sword. It's a sign of things to come, a sign of where we're at right now. And but yeah, I guess there are potential deflationary scenarios, but that assumes that the Fed will not do anything. And I think that the Fed will absolutely do something. I mean, I don't think that I think that they will try to save the system. The system is so credit-based. The system is not based upon, I mean, Doug often says, in a depression, the one who wins is the one who loses least. Everyone loses. But he follows up by saying, oh, but all the real assets will still be here. And that's true. The real assets will still be here. The problem is that most of the things that we consider assets today are credit. The credit will all be gone. So real assets, the factory will be there. But all the things that we measure our wealth by now are credit-based, and that will be gone. So in that environment, if that happens, if you have this crazy deflationary scenario, and it really does wash out, which would mean total system failure, by the way, complete system failure, the Fed is like totally impotent, then gold would definitely go down, but its purchasing power would still exist. You'd still be able to buy roughly the same number of goods and services with an ounce of gold that you can today.
How is this then the Fed and Powell right now? Is it Powell versus the Trump administration? Because you anticipate them to make a move. What is that move?
Well, I think I think that we're going to have a real financial event. So we see the market going down now, responding to the Trump tariffs. But eventually we'll have a financial problem, where there will basically be somebody who, like a Lehman moment kind of a thing where, somebody just doesn't have, they're insolvent. And then that creates these chains of insolvency, which then hits the entire system. And in that environment, the markets get hit really hard and the Fed steps in to basically reliquefy the banks. And in that environment, and I think that they will, again, I don't think it'll be any different, but the difference is that, what did they print during the financial crisis? Like $9 trillion, something like that. Is what their balance sheet went up to, which is now it's like down to 7 trillion, roughly, I think. That could balloon to 30 trillion, the Fed's balance sheet, in the next crisis, because it always has to get bigger. Every time there's a crisis, you need much more in order to get the same kind of result. And so I think the Fed will go along with it when it comes down to it. They're going to protect the banking system as much as they can.
Is it a battle between the Fed and the Trump administration for what they're doing right now?
Yeah, I don't really think so. There might be some disagreement on stuff, but I think when it comes down to it, they'll cooperate with them. Besant, like one of his major indicators of like, his goal is for the 10-year, which is supposedly like the gold standard for like what the cost of money, essentially. Even that, like, so they're really terrified of it getting over 5%. This is kind of what Besant is alluded to. And he says that they don't watch the stock market. His concern is the 10-year. And the 10-year, the 10-year has gone from, what was it? Yeah, it was 4.5% was the yield on it on the February 11th. And it's, it actually edged down today below 4. That's what they want. That means they can refinance their debt at a lower rate. And again, if you remember from last time, there's like $9 trillion that needs to be refinanced this year. So, I mean, I think ultimately rates are going to go way up, but I think that they're going to go way down first, and the market going down actually supports rates going down.
What are your thoughts on Besant and Howard Lutnick? Did you watch both of their interviews on the All In?
I did. Yeah. Well, let's see. What do I think about them? I think Besant is a serious, sober-minded guy who doesn't want the limelight, and I think is operating well outside of his comfort zone in this role. And I think he's doing it because I take him kind of more honestly, that at his, he knows the state that we're in right now. Again, that we're entering a Bretton Woods-like era. And in his words, he wants to be part of it. He wants to be part of it. I think Howard Lutnick is a, salesman, and I think he's super high energy and very like, he's a great salesman. I think he would have crushed it in the used car market, big time.
I sold copiers, Matt, like in my previous life 20 years ago. I would not have been able to hang with that dude because he could cold call all day, door to door to door.
Anything. And yeah, no, he's a killer. And, and one thing that comes out very clear from that All In podcast, and I wasn't aware of how integral he was in the recruiting process for everyone else in the Trump team. So clearly his role is bigger than I thought it was. Yeah, I know he's old friends with Trump, but I didn't understand that he was really like helped recruit the right people. He even claims to have recruited Elon into the administration. So, I think that the positive thing about Lutnick is that he's viewing things totally differently than everyone else would. Certainly no government person would review it, would look at the country the way he does. And then this is the thing that people get wrong about the sovereign wealth fund is they say, well, the sovereign wealth fund doesn't, you can't have a sovereign wealth fund if you have these deficits, if you have all this debt, because like you don't have anything to put in there. Well, he's looking at it like an investment banker. And an investment banker looks around and goes, what do we got here? We got some securities we can bundle, we can flip that, we can, we'll IPO this thing. Like they're looking to financialize everything in the room. And with those eyes, there's a lot of shit to financialize. And, one of those things could be, if they mark to market the gold, that could be something that could be financialized and leveraged to support, I think, not paying off debt. I think they would probably do it to support industrial policy, for instance. I mean, at some point, the there's going to be some things in this reinvestment that's being done in America that will not be paid for by private parties because it's they won't directly benefit from it. Apple building a new factory, yeah, it makes sense. Apple should pay. But what about new power plants that need to be created in order to support, all of the tech development that's around? I mean, there's just certainly a lot of private companies are putting in private power plants, including nukes, actually. I mean, what was the company I saw today? I think it was like Dow. Yeah, Dow Chemical. They have a permit to put in a nuke to power their facility. I mean, it's crazy. So private companies will finance a lot of this, but they're not going to finance all of it. Some infrastructure is going to have to come from the feds, and maybe that's how a way they might finance it. And there's lots of other things they can put in there. One of the things he talked about shows he's an investment banker. A lot of times these investment banks get paid in warrants when they do deals. So it's like, oh, we're going to take you public and, we're going to collect fees along the way, but we're also going to get warrants. And a warrant is a right to buy a stock at a certain price. So like, let's say the pre-IPO price on a stock might be $50 or the IPO price might be $50. And maybe the investment bank, the guys who put together the deals get the right to buy, 1 million shares of that stock at $50. And then when the stock goes to 100, they can exercise their warrant, buy the stock at 50 and sell it immediately at 100. So he talked about essentially all of the private companies that the U.S. does business with, the people that we send checks to for services, that we should be looking for warrants as part of it. He talked about it, of course, with Pfizer, because these people are so disconnected from reality. They don't understand that most of us are not in support of Pfizer at this point. But he's like, imagine what, we spent billions of dollars with them for these mRNA vaccines, which they think still were a miracle. Crazy. But we should get warrants.
I can't believe he said that after all that. Like, was that done intentionally or just not thinking?
I really think that these people are totally disconnected from reality. I mean, they're billionaires. I am like, the little bit of wealth I have is a rounding error. I mean, of his. I live in a bubble. Okay. So the bubble this guy lives in is so extreme. It's so he's so disconnected from so much of reality that I think he just doesn't see it. And I think they have no idea that there's many of us have great concerns. So I think when he brings it up, I think he really believes most people, because most people in his circle probably still believe it was a good idea.
Well, and the other, when you bring up the mention of warrants, and I was talking to somebody about this, and they were comparing it to the Enron scandal. Do you see any parallels with that?
No, I don't, because that was accounting fraud, really. So it's not that. It's just that it's that we want some of your stock. You got to pay us in some stock, and so no. But what it does, it's extremely fascist, is what it is. The fascism in its purest form is the alignment of the state and private enterprise. And, I mean, already if, the state is, one of the things that came out of those All In podcasts is that Booz Hamilton, which is a giant, subcontractor of the government or contractor of the government, that they get 96% of the revenue for maintaining IT systems within the government. And it's just a giant boondoggle what they do. So, you could argue that the fact that the government pays them that kind of money and that they provide such shitty service, that already is like a pretty close alignment between, the state and a private enterprise. But intermixing it so that we're also owners of those companies, and that we have interest in their stock performing well, because then we cash in those warrants. That furthers that alignment. It definitely creates areas for where fraud, or not fraud, where more grifting could take place, more corruption could occur. But obviously, we know that every part of our system is so deeply corrupt at all levels already. In my mind, it wouldn't be any worse than what they're already doing.
Yeah, rotted
But it
as a.
just shows his view.
What's that?
I said it just shows the way Howard Lutnick thinks about it. He's like, well, listen, we did them good. We put together the deal. Of course, we should get warrants. Of course, we should have a stake in the company. You know, so and that kind of thinking would never come from anybody, not from Wall Street.
Well, also too, I can't remember who said this to me on here, but was talking about how dangerous this is because the federal government, they're a conservator of assets, that they belong to the taxpayer, and for the government to come in and just claim these national parks and then put them in a sovereign wealth fund, they don't have the right to do that.
Yeah, well, that's to me that's just accounting. You know, right now it sits on a balance sheet somewhere or it's an asset somewhere within the federal government. And already, I mean, I've been to a lot of national parks. I love them, but like I don't get access to them. Like all I know is that there's well marked trails that you are allowed to go on and you cannot go anywhere else. So it doesn't feel like me as a taxpayer, it's my property in any way at all. It's like an amusement park now. It's just like you could walk on this trail with a herd of people and that's it. Um, they're gorgeous, but
So true.
so
So true.
yeah, they're not ours. They're not ours. They belong to the state already. And so you put it in a sovereign wealth fund. What's the difference between the two? I mean, that you can financialize it and you can leverage it, and if you can put it to work for the benefit of the people, then there's a better argument that Americans benefit from it than they do now. I mean, you're not closing the parks. You're still restricting movements on them. And ever since COVID, you have to get a lot of them. You have to sign up for an entry slot online to go in. I mean, they've gotten really ridiculous, actually. I mean, I didn't go to any last year, but usually I go to, we go every year to several. So we love hiking at them. But they've already restricted it for Americans' use for sure. So no, I don't think it's fraud. I don't think it's a matter of that you're taking away from people, from Americans. But an investment banker looks at it and goes, "This is something that could be financialized." And we do live in a financialized world. We need something. We have assets, and we need, how do you take that capital and turn it into something that could be put to work? That kind of thinking, really could have some positive effects. I mean, this is the way that China looks at their state assets, and they make the same argument that these are not the government's, these are the people's assets. I mean, they make that same argument. But they're actually trying to leverage their assets and turn them into different things, including great infrastructure. I just saw this video on YouTube of them, their plan to make a new hydroelectric dam. They already have the largest one in the world. Their new one they want to do will produce enough electricity to meet all the needs of Germany. I mean, it's a gigantic, massive project. So, they could, so like the Hoover Dam, I think the Hoover Dam could be argued as like, well, they shouldn't have touched that. Shouldn't have, I mean, if it's a national park and they turned it in, it's like, no, how can these things be turned into something that's useful for Americans is the question. And I think we haven't had that attitude for a long time. We've had the Club of Rome attitude about everything, which is that we ruin it if we touch it. We must stay away from it. We must keep it pristine. And I'm not saying, I think investment bankers have a rape and pillaging mindset primarily. That it goes way too far. But I do think that they're a good entrepreneur, or a reasonable eye could look at the assets and think, are these serving America well? And if not, find out a way to make it so that they are.
Yeah, he said, one of the things he said that stood out to me was like a no-brainer, but you don't realize until after you hear it, about the post office and the Census Bureau. It's like they're going to all these addresses anyway every single day.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, there's a lot of things that like that. There's a huge amount of waste that occurs in government, so getting rid of those things, but also like offering better service to people. Like, why can't, if you want to get a passport, they did put that in the post office, right? That's where you go and apply for a passport. Now, wouldn't it make sense to also use that facility you're already staffing to get where people could apply for Social Security or people could apply for whatever government service, you know? I mean, there's so many improvements on waste that could be done to improved, but that's not sovereign wealth fund stuff. But this is an example of how, the government doesn't think about customers; it thinks about fiefdoms. And so, this is my department, and we want more facilities and more staff in order to deliver better services for the people.
I'll tell you, it's that was another conversation with Howard Lutnick's that I went back and listened to a couple of times, and even parts of it as well, revisiting it a third and fourth time because I just found it fascinating what he was talking about.
Yeah, I agree. It was the podcast he did with I can't recall. It's this Bitcoin guy. Can't remember his name for some reason right
Anthony
now.
Pompilano.
Yeah,
We talked
exactly. It
about
was the
that
one.
last time.
Yeah, it was that one in October where I started where for the that was the first one where I started to think, oh, maybe there's a way out of this. Because like I said, no matter what, the economic problems we must reckon with. And when it comes, it's going to be brutal for everybody. And when listening to him talk there with his creative approach that he was, looking at things like how do we monetize the shit we've got? How do we unlock the value that we've got all around us? That started me thinking that there could be a way out of it all. And yeah, so it is good for people to listen to it because he has Crump's ear and you get to understand the thinking better. And one of our job, or well, at least my job, the way I see it, is to try and understand what's really going on so that we can not be hurt by it and hopefully be advantaged by it. But these aren't things I think that we have any control over, but they will have some effect on us. And so trying to understand the motives of people, the things that they say are important is important is first of all, you got to understand their motives and their assumptions. So like Stephen Moran says, the dollar is overvalued and he makes a clear case and that problem must be solved. So then okay, well, they really believe as a core assumption, they must devalue the dollar. So, that's useful to know because if you know that, then their actions make sense. You can kind of predict what might happen in the future. With Howard Lutnick, you get because he talks a lot and he doesn't seem to have much of a filter. He doesn't seem to have much that he holds back. So he just kind of freeforms his ideas. You get to see the way they're thinking about it. So again, understanding what their assumptions are about what the problem is and the difficulty we face, and then hearing them how they might tackle the solutions, allows us to really piece things together. Unfortunately, they'll never be clear with us about exactly what the plan is because they have to surprise the market. They have to surprise the people. The market is the big thing they have to surprise because if the market understands fully what's happening, the market will make it way more difficult for them to do it because money can free flow anywhere and they need money to be in certain places at certain times for their policies to have an impact.
One of my, well, I would say the biggest concern, and I go back to 2008 where, and I said the story a million times, but I was working in retail banking, and when you saw Lehman Brothers and Bear Stearns, and I had never experienced fear in people. Like they would come into the bank I worked at and just scared, like withdraw large amounts of cash, put it into a safety deposit box, which, if the bank was closed tomorrow, you're not getting in there. But it just goes to show you people just, they were really screwed up.
Yeah, the thing of what can I do? and they think it's better to have it there than to have it just in the bank, numbers on a screen. Yeah.
And we didn't even have, social media the way it is today on your phones and the ability to put out information and, spread messaging. So, and even for today, for example, with the market going the way it is, you can spread fear and scare people so much. When this starts to occur, because it seems inevitable, what kind of fear is this going to set into people that, and we saw this also during COVID, right? No rational thinking, no critical thinking, no common sense.
That's true, but at the same time, during COVID, I would argue that that was all managed information that made people feel that way. So, maybe social media helps reinforce the state's ideas in such a way that gets people to cooperate, So it could work the opposite way, where instead of organic fear spreading, that instead people, people are like turn into mask Nazis, Maybe people get shamed out of taking money out of banks instead of keeping it in. I mean, you could see they're so good at the information war is so amazing. They're so good at it now. You could really it's such a crazy valuable tool for the state and for people who have an agenda to be able to make sure that agenda is out there and that a certain segment of the population will buy into it hook, line, and sinker again.
Yeah, it could be reverse. What makes you wonder then what Elon's role is in all this, because he owns the biggest, arguably, right, the biggest social media platform, and the other thing is too, is Zuckerberg, Bezos, they've all fallen in line.
They've all fallen in line, and I think that's because where they understand where things are going. I think that they you know, I mean, Zuckerberg was the only one who I think really, really directly went against the Trump administration at one point. I think they were, funded like, was it $500 million for these, the vote to get the vote out essentially against Trump. So, but his mea culpa, I think he understood, was really important, and it probably keeps him out of future legal trouble to do that. But I think that the tech people understand that this is the rise of the tech era, that uh, a central bank digital currency will come out of this. The support of the capital investment, that all of these people see the AI future that's coming, I think once they were convinced that they had a government that was going to that saw that future also and was going to support it, they were all in, because and all of this, some people still doubt that the AI stuff and the robotic stuff. They really doubt, they still don't really get it.
Matt, let me
But
interrupt you a second because I get conflicting things on that. I had Melody and Jack, and they were talking about CoreWeave's IPO and Nvidia, and so I heard that side of it. I don't know if you had a chance to listen to that yet, but that side of it. And then I had Porter Stansberry on a couple weeks ago, and he was saying like that's the spice. The AI is the spice, or energy, excuse me, energy is the spice.
yeah,
So to me, it sounds like the contradictory, both sides
they're
of it.
almost two different things. They're almost two different things in my mind. One is the speculative investment that's gotten into these stocks is, it's overspent. I mean, it's a bubble. It's a problem. And so that has to be reconciled. And I think Jack makes a good argument. I've seen him in other places talk about with CoreWeave and what's clear, it looks like fraud, what's going on there with them to kind of juice the books, juice the sales. Um, but that is a separate issue than the technology itself. And I think that the technology itself is real and will change everything. So you can believe both things. That's a bubble, and part of it's a scam, and that will be reconciled with, and in a way that is going to punish anybody who holds these stocks. And the technology is real, and it's going to change everything in a very short order. I mean, there was something. This was like 6 weeks ago. Goldman came out and said that an S1 is a document that you have to publish when you go public. It's an extensive exercise to put this thing together. Usually teams of attorneys over weeks, like working nonstop to put this document together. Goldman said that AI can complete 96% of it now, 6 weeks ago. I bet you can complete 97% of it now. That was 6 weeks ago. And soon it'll be 100%. And think of those teams of lawyers that bust their ass, expensive lawyers too, to do that whole thing won't be necessary for this process at all. I think if lots of white collar jobs are going to go the way of the dodo bird. I mean, if you were the best job you could have had going to college over the last probably 15 years was to get a good degree or a degree from a good college in finance. And then you go and you bust your ass at one of these investment banks, doing really low level tasks, but a lot of work, and you have to be smart to do it. All of those jobs can be replaced today by AI, those low-level jobs. And it's just going to continue to move up that stack. So hiring is going to go down, and then eventually there will be layoffs associated with it. It's just not necessary. I mean, we are a service economy and an overly financialized service economy at that. Those services typically involve entering data somewhere, and moving papers from one place to another, right? It's some form of that. All of that is unnecessary and will go away. And so that's going to be incredibly disruptive. I think it will be just like this Trump reset. The other side of it could be very positive, but it's going to cause a lot of chaos between now and then. And I think that, it changes the job market for people dramatically.
Yeah, I envision, even the value of a CPA degree will become less and less and less from this. Plus, too, you don't know what's going to happen with the tax system.
Yes, I think it's going to be simplified. I think filing is going to be automated. With a central bank digital currency, which will come.
It's basically here anyway. The principles, the foundation's there. And I was talking to somebody last night about this. They're like, "Oh, don't say that. You're making me nervous." I'm like, "You do everything on your phone. You do everything on that thing. It's the principle. You're using it already."
Yeah. Today, the federal government could prepare your taxes for you and send you a bill without you having to go through all that effort. Today, they can do that. They don't do it because part of it is they want you to complete it and to swear that it's accurate. They want that process in there, even though my tax return is like this thick and it's put together by my accountants, and I have to sign and swear it's correct. And I'm like, I hope you guys did it right this year, because I can't even make sense of it. So, but yeah, those things are going to be resolved. And once you have a central bank digital currency, and once the entire federal, I think what Elon's primary job is now, what he's really doing, is he's basically digitizing the federal government. He's making it so that the data can talk to each other across these different departments, and that essentially our AI future, our government, will be able to do a lot more things than it's able to do now, for better and for worse.
Yeah, and I saw something yesterday where they said that Doge could potentially end after 130 days. I don't know how accurate that was.
His role has to, I think by law, like him, not Doge, because that's a department, it's stood up by an act of Congress, or under Obama, it was stood up and it has a legal status. And so anyone that's actually working for it on the payroll of the federal government can work in perpetuity. But if you're coming in, some of these outsiders that are coming in, and doing a tour of duty, doing it, for free, they can really only do 130 days legally.
What about, do you envision, if CBDC, would it still be in the form of dollars when you're doing your shopping? Like, would your Chase account or Wells Fargo account still show that principal amount in, say, a checking or savings?
Yeah, it wouldn't be any different. I mean, that's the whole thing is like there could realistically be a CBDC that exists today and us have that just is happening in the background with us having no awareness of it. And I think for most people, most of the time, it will have no effect. Now, the problem is that they can make it rules based and control based very easily. You know, it'll make debanking a lot easier. Be making they can ration things, saying no, you can't purchase any of this because you've already had too much of that. They could say, or like you've been drinking too much, so no more Jack Daniels for you. Yeah, I mean they'd be able to do things like that, but so the programmability part of it, is not there yet. But I mean, realistically, the rest of it, the tracking of everything could be behind the scenes and you have no awareness of it. I don't think it is. I think it will be. So
What do you think it will be? What in terms of tracking or the?
yeah, yeah. Well, I don't think everything is tracked, obviously. I don't think it's being tracked by, using blockchain beneath the surface right now. But I do think that will change. I mean, you have people like the Bank of America CEO coming out recently saying that as soon as Congress makes, these allows them to do cryptos, it'll all be in crypto. They'll basically have their own stable coin that'll basically be doing all of this, tracking everything behind the scenes. And it'll make it, it won't fundamentally change anything for anybody actually, but it does make it so, it's a much more efficient on the banking side for them to have it that way. And ultimately it does set it up for programmability.
Uh, One last thing I want to I want to shift over to Europe for a second, and then get an update on the book on the preparation. You know, the other thing too that I had heard in some of my conversations in regards to Europe, in order for this to work, right, this plan, that Europe has to buy into it. But if they're in the process of right now, these countries, building up their military, becoming more independent, how would that play a factor in any of this?
Well, technically for the Mar-a-Lago Accord to work, that's basically the countries ultimately. So the way it works is that the idea is you bludgeon everybody with tariffs to kind of make them want to come to the table and work out a deal. And then when that deal is worked out, they would agree to essentially, a certain a current the rate at which they would exchange their currency for ours. Because part of the thing is because the dollar is too valuable, right? So that's one of their arguments. Dollar is too valuable, and it's too valuable in relation to other currencies. So our trading partners, which makes the price of our goods artificially in their mind higher than they should be. So they're less affordable for Europeans to buy American products, less affordable for Japanese to buy American products, Chinese, et cetera. So they want them to manage their exchange rates to allow their currency to appreciate against the dollar. Now, if there's enough pain, economic pain caused by tariffs, theoretically, you can get them to the table to do that. That was done in the past, and was the Plaza Accords. It was part of that. I mean, that's what was done when in 1971. When took gold, closed the gold window, made it so the dollar was no longer exchangeable for gold, rolled out an immediate 10% tariff on every country so that they would then come to the table, and they had they called it the Smithsonian Agreement. Finally, when they all came together and they said, okay, we'll support your devaluation by fixing the exchange rates between all the major trading partners. So that model has been done before, where they've done that. They use tariffs as the bludgeon, essentially getting them to agree to it. Now, with Europe in particular, Europe is. It's funny. Trump has really made himself hated by almost every European, even Europeans that would not have a strong opinion about anything. If you talk to Europeans, you'd be surprised. They really hate Trump. And it's not just the leftists, the socialists. It's like your average European really, really hates Trump. And it's because of the way his style. And certainly, it's like JD Vance isn't helping with any of it either, the comments he's making. But a lot of that is simply done, and this gets to an important point I have to discuss, is that the it's to get Europe to spend the money that the U.S. has been funding forever to cover Europe's security. And so, like, it's almost as if you have to have the Europeans hating America before they believed that they actually need to finance their own defense. I mean, since even during the Cold War, there have been great efforts by the US to try and get Europe to spend some money on defense, and they've refused to do it. Instead, they have this crazy social welfare benefits, and we, American taxpayers, have footed the bill for them forever. And so he's getting that to change. Now it's going to be devastating, I think, for the European economy, to take this, print all this money to spend it on weapons and things. But you almost had to get them to hate us, or at least to hate Trump, in order to even get them to come in agreement like that and agree to do what we need them to do, which is to cover their own expenses on this, and allow us, the U.S., to do what it thinks it needs to do most, which is shift to China. Like, so much of all that is being done, everything that's being done, is under the guise of national security. So yes, this is an effort to remake the U.S. economy, to improve the U.S. economy in substantial ways, to increase the wages of Americans. But is it because Donald Trump loves, the auto workers so much, like he claims? I think as much as he loves any random, yeah, probably. But like, it's really because from a national security perspective, which is all the state really cares about, the US is weak now, and it could be crushed if you just roll the clock forward with China. I mean, we don't stand a chance. We cannot produce weapons enough to even supply Ukraine, let alone to be able to go. I mean, the Lockheed was ordered by the Pentagon to produce their F-35s without Chinese parts, and they're like, we can't. I mean, it's impossible, so they cannot make them without Chinese parts. And it goes, every part of our economy is so intertwined now globally in these global supply chains, and mostly with China, who they see as a real adversary, whether it means we go to war with them or we're going to go to war or not. They see them as an adversary. And so everything that they're doing is done through this national security perspective, I guess. And the important thing about that is that under the guise of national security, they will do anything. There are no limits if they say it's national security. So that's the framework that they're looking at it through. And I think that if you look at it from that framework, for them to do whatever it takes, basically, to get Europe to start footing that bill, which the U.S. can't afford, really, at this stage, to sort of be opposition to Russia, which I think the U.S. still wants, like a military oppositional force to Russia, hoping to coax them away from China still. I think Trump's kind of trying to be a good cop and coax them away from China. But the military tool there, I think, is a really an important one. And so I think that it all makes sense if you think that all that matters is China, and they will do anything that they can to sort of oppose China, and that means building up economic power, the ability to produce stuff, the hard stuff here. And I even think maybe Iran falls into this mix, because Iran supplies oil to China, and Iran is an ally of China. They work with China on different things. They had like military drills with China recently, and if the basic thinking is Trump, because he's a Zion Don, people say, will go after Iran. And I think that they might. I do think that there's a strong chance that they're going to attack Iran. Actually, I think it's highly likely. But I think that in the grand scheme of things, certainly he would do stuff to support Israel. But I also think they look at it and go, well, that's another one we have to peel away from China. And by attacking them could be a way of accomplishing that.
You think you see a war with Iran very, very possible?
Quite possible. Yeah. If you just, it's the rhetoric is one thing, but the rhetoric isn't what you should watch. You should watch the movement of troops, the movement of military assets. And so certainly the B-2s on Diego Garcia is a real serious thing for them to move so many over there. Also, there's this guy I follow on YouTube, and he tracks all these military flights, and you can just see these C-17s flying in from Europe and from Asia, bringing in all kinds of weaponry into the area, so that they have the capability. If Trump says yes, then they can go. So I think it's highly likely it will happen, actually, and it's terrible and unfortunate, and it would cause crazy consequences. But you have to look at it. So let's say the worst case scenario happens, and then they attack oil refineries in Saudi Arabia in response, and they block the Strait of Hormuz. Does that hurt America as bad as it hurts China? Probably not. And so would it hurt us? Yes. Would it hurt China more? I think so. And so would they be willing to, this if it's a game of chess, I don't think it's 4D chess at all. But in a game of chess, are you willing to surrender, a bishop now and then when it makes sense? I think so. So, even if it hurts you. So through the framework of national security and them clearly seeing China as the key adversary they need to build up against, and of course, economic power is critical to the entire thing, then I could see them sacrificing that along the way to try and peel it away, to kind of whittle away at China's power. I think that their effort with Panama is the same thing, trying to whittle away China's power there.
Yeah, Michael Yan is down there. I had him on over the weekend and talking about that. And from what he's saying, the
He's
United
way on
States
top of
is
it.
very serious about reclaiming it.
They will not let China have it. No, I think that's the key thing. It's not that the U.S. has to have it, but they will not allow China to continue to have it.
What about Greenland then? Does that play into China at all?
I mean, not really. That's much more of a Russia thing, actually. But certainly there are ambitions between Russia. Russia has a lot of Arctic ambitions and capabilities, and China doesn't have direct access to the Arctic in the same way. But as far as they make everything through global trade, and certainly that closing that off to them in some way could hurt them. So yeah, but the Greenland thing definitely has to do with this national security imperative. And in the national security imperative, they do not see Russia yet as a buddy, even though Trump has had, talked about positive things and he said he's going to, end the war in 24 hours or whatever. But they only cut off weapons to Ukraine for a few days, So it's Russia is still considered an adversary so long as Russia is allied with China. And I think that they definitely have plans in place or contingencies is if Russia can't be brought into the fold and walk away from China, which I think is going to be very hard to get them to separate at this point.
So much going on right now. Yeah,
It isn't. I think it's making sense of it. Does it fit within a large? Can you fit it all within a larger mental model? That's the key thing, And if you can, it starts to make some sense because they're never going to tell us exactly what they're thinking. He's just going to, Trump will say, "Well, of course, Canada should be our 51st state," and well, yeah, we're going to take Greenland, and you see all these different things. It doesn't. They go. It seems so random and not to make sense. But if you see it as they see as China as an adversary that will basically be able to push America around and do whatever it wants to us in a certain period of time. And it's not far in the future. They're an economic powerhouse like the world has never seen. They have already, if you take, I mean, America GDP might be higher if you count our financial services, but if you count producing shit, we're not even close. Not even close. And so they will crush us at some point if they want to. And so they must act now to do it. And so, all of the assumptions about the world order, everything post World War II, is completely gone. So all of the assumptions, friends, foes, all of that all gone, and they will reorganize. They're reorganizing, all the pieces on the chessboard to try and put pressure on China.
Oh, it's we are living in the most unique, fascinating time, in my opinion.
Oh, it's exciting and dangerous. Yeah. And the biggest thing is, most of the stuff that happens around the world not going to affect most people, most Americans. It doesn't make any difference. The economic stuff will affect you, and you have to understand that they are going to devalue the dollar. And so it's important that everyone do things, whatever they can, in order to protect themselves from that. And I mean, owning gold is one of the simplest things that they can do to do that.
And the reality of it is life is going to change for a lot of people. But I also wonder, when this starts to occur, and we're not that far off from it, in my view, and, how will people react?
Well, I think it'll be like everything has been really since 2020. Um, it'll happen slowly enough that I don't think that there will be very few flashpoints for people to react to. You say it'll start happening. I mean, it's happening already. I mean, we're in it. Um, the the trade war is on right now. They've been effective at devaluing the dollar already. It is happening, but so much of it will be happening. So there won't be any it will never appear on the nightly news. Okay, people, now you should be afraid. Now you should be concerned. And that is what happened during you talk about the people during the financial crisis. They came on the news and the people on TV said, the world is ending. We might not have a financial system tomorrow. I mean, that's what they said. And so it put people into a panic. I think people learn from that. I don't think we'll see that again, anything like that. But, and I certainly don't expect that the authorities are ever going to tell us when it's like, okay, now you should be concerned, you know. By the way, we went to DEF CON 2. Don't want to mention it, just between you and I mean, it's not, you'll never know. You will never know. You'll never know. So I just think people have to just pay attention to what's actually happening around them, understand the assumptions and motivations of the people that are in charge, understand the way that they think, and then come up with their own framework for how the world actually works. And then whenever you see news, you go, does this make sense with that framework? And if it doesn't make sense, then the framework might need to be adjusted or adapted. And I think we're all going to have to constantly adjust and adapt our frameworks as time goes on, to the reality of the events that we see around us. But it's important that you have a framework and you're thinking for yourself and that you're taking actions to protect yourself, because there isn't anyone else that's going to come and save you.
Yeah, I definitely wouldn't be traveling to Europe right now, I don't think.
Well, right now, I think Americans have to have a visa to go to Europe. Do you know that? Yeah, they
Mm-mm.
rolled out that policy last year, taking effect this year. So yeah, I think not that it's a process. You have to give, not that it's that hard, but you have to give them biometrics actually to qualify for a visa. So they don't really want us there.
It's not a place I'd want to be right now anyway, would you?
No, I don't. The place I want to be is where I am.
Yeah, me too,
It's
man. How do I get a spot on the compound? I want in.
there's room. There's definitely room to put up a tent. That's for sure. Plenty of tents. Um, yeah, yeah. The world is different down here. Yeah, it's totally different. But no, I wouldn't really want to go to Europe at this stage. Although I love Europe, but I wouldn't want to go now.
Last thing, then, can you give us an update on the preparation and what Maxim's up to? I mean, I follow him on Substack, but for people that don't know or don't follow him,
Yeah.
which I encourage people to do that, to go follow Maxim and also follow the preparation on Substack. But could you?
Yeah, so he has a Substack. It's thepreparation.com is where you can see what he's doing. But this is my now 19-year-old son who is engaging in a experiment. He's our beta tester in a alternative to college. So it's it's a 4-year program to model college, but it's nothing like college. It still has all the academic stuff to do and learn and read, but the primary orientation of the program is actually getting out in the world and doing things and acquiring real skills along the way. So recently, for instance, as a recommendation from the great Matt Bracken, my son, went sailing through the fall. Well, he'd never been sailing before. There was totally no experience for him, but he went in like the deep water, starting in the Falklands, and actually sailed through the Strait of Magellan over to Chile. And it was a 3-week ordeal for him. It was challenging and very, very positive for him. And the net result of it is after this trip, he's a qualified crewman. He could work on a sailboat, anywhere else in the world now. So the idea is that you get them doing real things, having really incredible experiences, really figuring out who they are along the way, and acquiring skills that are of recognized economic value. I'm not saying, that that's what he'd want to do his whole life or that he would get rich doing it or anything like that, but he has a skill now. He can create value. And let's see, today's the 3rd. So on the 1st, he was in Idaho getting recertified for his wildland firefighting summer gig. He works as a paramedic on wildfires during the summer. Becoming an EMT was one of the things that he did as part of the preparation. That was one of the skills he acquired along the way. And he's getting his private pilot license next in all this again. You'd be able to, does that have a lot of economic value? No. And is it expensive? Yeah, that's probably the most expensive thing he's done so far. But all of these things, he learns a lot along the way. And the other thing is that, how should I explain this? The program is oriented, it's broken up into 16 quarters, like a university would be. It's over 4 years. Each of these quarters, we call it a cycle. Each cycle has an anchor activity. That's sailing, for instance, was an anchor activity. Getting his EMT certification is another one. There's all kinds of different ones in there, like becoming a certified operator of heavy equipment, for instance, is another one. There's becoming a private pilot is one. There's all kinds of different things. And then along with that, in that cycle is educational material, academic related material that basically goes along with the theme of what you're doing. So, in college, you learn things, in school in general, you learn things that are disconnected. It's like you have math class and it's just math. And then you have biology class and it's just biology. And then you have history and it's just history. And it's very hard for people to sort of string these things together and understand how they're all connected. And thus, it's hard for them to gain knowledge that's actually useful. Because they can't. It's just they learn random facts essentially, and to be able to pass a test. Well, the idea of each of these cycles is that the content each one creates like a lattice work in someone's mind, so that they understand things at a deeper level because they connect to each other. So that's basically how it works. He's as I said, is our beta tester. We've been working on a book for it now for I guess about a year. And when I say we, it's me and Doug Casey and Maxim. Maxim contributed a lot to it. My part's done. Maxim's part's done. It's on Doug's shoulders right now. He's made a lot of progress. He's got a little more to go before he's done, and we're self-publishing it. So, my hope is that it's published within 90 days. But, I don't want to put pressure on Doug, really. I asked him about it, but ultimately, it's just he's got to come to it when he comes to it. So he's getting there. Hopefully it'll be done very soon.
Have you thought about, for your son, but also from a woman's standpoint, like your daughter, would it be similar kind of criteria, or have you considered that at all?
Yeah, no, the fundamental structure will be the same. One of the things is I'd say it's easier for me to do this for my son because I could relate. Like I remember the things that motivated me, that I was afraid of, that that mattered to me, as a young man. I could remember all of those things very vividly. So this is written specifically for young men, but I have and the only reason I agreed with Doug to write the book is because I had a son who needed something like this. Well, I have a daughter too. She's 17 and she's good. She will start her own version of this next year. So yeah, there's going to be a female version of it. And, I'm going to have to, rely on some of the women in my life to make sure that I'm hitting the right notes with it because, girls are definitely different. I mean, the motivations are different, and I think in many ways better and more complex. But yeah, obviously we do plan to have one for girls next. We got to get the boy one done first. That's got to come out.
What one of the things that you said, I don't remember if it was you and I talking offline or you said it on one of our previous conversations, but I want to bring it up again because it's really stuck in my mind, especially as I've talked to people that are my age with kids. Obviously I'm not a parent, disclaimer, so I don't know anything, but friends of mine that have kids that are getting ready to enter the college system or, they're still in high school, and I don't find a value in a college degree anymore. Yet people will say to my friends that are parents saying, oh, the college experience, the college experience. And you had said something along the lines of, maybe it was even Maxim that said it, like, you're going to go to college and hang around with a bunch of people your own age. Not that that's a bad thing, but there's more value in, embedding yourself in with people that are older from an experience standpoint. Did you say that or did Maxim? I don't remember who said that.
Well, he and I both have talked about this a lot. I think that there's a lot of advantages with peers, like having peers, people that you can relate to because you're like at the same stage of life and you know, you can relate well to each other. But if you're counting on, this is the whole problem with school in general. The idea that you basically send your kids off to an institution where they are isolated specifically to kids within their age group, not ability group, not anything, but just their age group. Those kids, all their age, become the primary influencers on their life. So they become preoccupied with the interests of the people that they're around. And, the truth is that for the most part, your peers can't, especially if you're a young person, your peers can't teach you shit. They know nothing. You know nothing. They know nothing. They are the primary influences in your life. That's a big risk, I think. I the all of the great men that I've known in my life are people that were one or two generations older than me. All the things I may have some peers that are, I think I've learned a little bit from, maybe like things that might relate to my business. An entrepreneur friend can have some ideas that I can be, some tricks or strategies or tax plan or something like that that's really applicable to my business so I can use it. But as far as like the lessons of life to like how to live well, how to know what matters, like that definitely should not come from your peers. They are idiots. They're an idiot like you're an idiot. You need the influence of others. And the other thing is that older generations and people, and I know that there's a big war between, least of words at this point, between especially the boomers and millennials and Gen Z. Like there's like, you'll find online where they'll be shitting on boomers hardcore and boomers like will say all the wrong things in response to them, making it worse. It is, this divide is stupid and silly, but I think it's because they're both so disconnected from one another. Like never in society have we been so segregated by age. Never. It's unnatural. Like, and the truth is that older people, if you're a young man and you're trying to get ahead in life, all of your peers are also trying to get ahead in life. They are your competition. They are working against you. Even if they like you are competition for them. But if you go one generation up, you are not competing with the people that are a generation older than you at all. They will not see you as competition. And if you are a stand-up guy, somebody who is going places, who has ambition, and who acts in good faith, they will go out of their way to help you. They will open doors for you. They will make possible things for you that are not possible for you to get on your own, to have access to opportunities, to jobs, to information, let alone the lessons they can actually teach you about the way the world actually works. So this, I hate that people do not get along, like that people see older generations as an adversary. I think it's a gigantic mistake. And just one tiny proof of it. Like Matt Bracken has taken a particular interest in what my son is doing. Matt Bracken wants my son to succeed. He doesn't know my son, but he's seen he just sees, he observes what's happening, and he wants him to win. Like he has an ally in Matt Bracken. Matt Bracken making recommendations for him. This happens all the time, actually. Like if young people will expose themselves, will be open to older generations, will seek to work with them and around them and say, like, and have attitude of what as a young person, what can I do to make you, old person, what can I make your life better? It opens up a whole bunch of opportunities for them. So if you isolate, most people are isolated with this strict peer group from kindergarten through high school at least, and they continue this institutionalization through college, and they enter the real world where they are going to have to interact with people that are not their age, and they don't even know how to talk to them. They're scared of them. I meet people who are in high school all the time. When I'm, meeting new people and they have kids, it's shocking the number of kids who, when like, don't think when I'm meeting their parents, I'm just meeting them for the first time. The kids think, oh, well, this is adult talk. I can just zone out. I don't have to say hi. Like I'm not part of the conversation. I only talk to kids. Like that's kind of the attitude they have. And it's trained into them because they've been, it's like, well, no, kids are for them, people that are their age. And if they're not their age, then that's a totally different social group and it's not your business. It's bizarre. Like, I love old people. Old people have done a tremendous good for my life. People a generation or two older than mine have opened doors for me, have made things possible for me. And I've done the same for people not of my generation also, because I don't know. I don't even know. I don't even know what the instinct is, but there's something in older people that if they see something, they see somebody go, that kid's got it. There's something there I like. They want to encourage it. And it's for no gain. It's a bizarre thing. And I think if young people understood that there's a legion of people a generation older than you that want you to win and are there to help, I think it would totally change their attitude about it. And if they do not get out of this matrix where they're trapped with their peers only, they'll never even see it. They'll never even know it's there. And instead they'll think, oh, the boomers are the problem because they got cheap real estate. It's a huge mistake.
I get, what I see too with some of these younger people, and I hear the stories. These kids, they don't even go to school. They don't want to go. They don't want to get out of bed. Some of them, it's unbelievable.
Well, I don't see. I don't blame them. I thought school was prison.
Me too.
I hated it. I mean, when I was in, I was a notorious school skipper even in second grade, and it got to a point where I'm not kidding you, the principal came and picked me up at school every day to get me to go. I hated it. I thought it was hell. I was prison. So I don't blame people. They're like, yeah, I want to sleep in instead of go to school. Yeah, of course. You go to a place, you sit around a bunch of retards, and you have an adult tell you what you have to do all day. Like it's not a place for learning. Like it sucks. Like not only should you not send your kids to college, you should not send them to school. Like you should homeschool them. And they'll wake up in the morning, they'll be excited about the day.
Sounds like corporate America, man. Same thing.
Exactly. What, you're not excited about getting up and going to your cube on Monday morning? Come on.
How many times? I mean, I've been there where you're like walking into the building and your coworkers and you all feel the same. Universally across the board, you're all like, "Fuck, it's Monday." Pardon my language, but I'm having my own. You could feel it with me right now. I guess people like, "Fuck."
100%. But you didn't feel that way in school?
No, I felt that, no, I did. But I mean, it just the parallels between that and corporate America, like
Yeah. But so
sitting in
you're
a
wondering why
cubicle.
kids don't like it. Or you're wondering why kids don't like it.
Yeah.
It's insane that they don't learn anything. If you look at the amount of work that they cover in a day, they're held back by the biggest behavioral problem kid in the class, or they can't do anything they can't ask questions about things that they're interested in. They can't pursue their own curiosity, which basically means that they feel like they learn nothing. They're just going through the motions. And the truth is, they are being trained to follow authority the entire time. And the authority oftentimes is a teacher who doesn't deserve any authority over you. Certainly hasn't earned it. So, like, I like kids that rebel against that, actually. I can relate to that.
And then they go to college and they put themselves in such a large, deficit to where you get out of this, you get out and you're a slave and you learn
That's
nothing.
right. Yeah, and even if you learn something and even if you have a great time, like this is our argument is you can have a great time and not go to college. It can still be accomplished. Like all the college experience, like but trust me, you can model a better version of that by not going to college. Like define what that is exactly. And like I can show you how you can attain the same thing without having to go to college. And do you learn stuff? Yeah, you probably do learn some things. You're bound to have a good professor, maybe multiple, who you learn like really captivate you and teach you some things that are useful. But the problem is if they don't tie it together with any kind of lattice work, like if learning doesn't come from tying multiple things together so you can start to see how it's useful in the real world, then all you've got is some factets in your head, that you kind of know, and you got a degree, and that might get you an employment, which gets you access to more institutions, gets you access to more cubes or whatever version of that exists. Yeah, so it's like the fundamental question that we're trying to help young people answer with the preparation is not what do you want to do, which is the question every young man gets asked. It's what kind of man do you want to be? And then let's order your activities around trying to achieve that. And I think if young men have a clear picture of the kind of man they want to be, if they just even have thought the question out, then I think that the end result, no matter what they do, is going to be better. So you can figure out the kind of man they want to be. And, the preparation offers a lot of structure for exactly how you get there.
Yeah, it's been great following Maxim on Substack and watching his journey. And man, Substack's become just such a great tool. I mean, X is great too, but Substack's just a different wrinkle.
It really is. It allows people that got a story to tell it in a way and make money from it if the audience feels like it's worth it. Yeah, I think it's great.
It's a scholarly, it provides people a long format to write their thoughts, and I consider it more of a scholar platform.
Well, there definitely are some real academics on there that do some amazing writing, and I don't mean just like medical or whatever people. I mean like highly educated people who write very well on very interesting topics. So if you're a big reader like I am, then you can get lost in it for hours a day for sure.
Last question: any books you're reading right now that people always are curious what somebody's reading?
Well, I'm rereading Poor Charlie's Almanac again. I was reading multiple things at a time, and I'm rereading a book called Boom, and it's basically about bubbles in stock markets and as they relate to technology innovation. So I'm only about a third of the way through that. That's interesting. And then my daughter just gave me this book that she finished yesterday. She said I should read. It's called Viking Tales. It's basically Viking mythology. But she's like, yeah, Dad, I read it. I think you'll really like it. So this is probably the next thing I'll read.
Where can people find you, Matt?
Best place is crisisinvesting.com. We publish an e-letter there for free. It's on Substack. We also have a paid publication. If you're interested in how we are investing, given this Trump reset plus all the AI stuff, then we discuss that there. We make specific recommendations of stocks. I gave you a couple of ideas earlier. The other thing is I do a podcast with the great Doug Casey. It's called Doug Casey's Take. We do that typically twice a week. And published an episode yesterday, and we have Frank Giustra on Friday.
Oh, it's gonna be. Did you record it already?
Nope. Hope so. Let's hope it goes well. It's happening Friday.
Oh, it'll be great. I can't wait to hear that.
Should be good. He's a good guy. Very interesting man. He's done a lot.
And then you gave out Maxim's Substack as well. Your Substack.
Yeah, crisisinvesting.com for me, and then for Maxim, it's thepreparation.com.
As always, I appreciate you taking the time to talk to me. I know you get hit up a lot these days, so the fact that you make yourself available, I can't thank you enough.
Friends. We're friends. Oh, you talk about my Substack. We should talk about your Substack. Now, you started doing something new recently, where basically you release first to your Substack audience. Is that right? That's how it works? For 24 hours, or is it longer?
No, 24 hours. I mean, give or take. Yeah, I thought, I saw somebody else do it, and I was like, oh, this is, I publish it right away, put it out there, within, so this conversation will be up within an hour or two, and give people early access if they wanna listen. Something I've started doing for my paid subscribers.
Yeah, and people complain about it. I hear. I've seen some comments about it. I think it's insane. Here's the thing: it's like you're trying to earn a living here, and I think that in the past I've encouraged people to send you money in donations, which I still encourage people to do, and the Venmo or Cash App to send you some money. That's a good thing to do. But I think even do which one you want. But I also think it was probably a good idea is to subscribe. Because if you like what Mike is doing, then I think it makes sense for you to support him financially because, his rent still must be paid. And his two choices are he can fill it with bullshit commercials every episode in order to finance it, or it's reader supported or viewer supported. And the way you set it up on Substack, I think makes a lot of sense because, the people some people are broke, legitimately broke, can't afford it. You still give them all this for free. It just comes 24 hours later. But if you're like me and I watch all of your episodes and I want to see them right away, as soon as I saw that you had that paywall set up, I'm like, well, I guess I should be a subscriber, which I am now. So I'd encourage everybody who's watching this, if you're not already a subscriber to the Substack, just do it. I don't even know what the amount is, honestly, you charge for it, but it's worth it. If you want to support what Mike is doing, you should subscribe to his Substack. And you get the advantage of being able to watch the videos 24 hours earlier than you would otherwise be able to see them.
Well, I appreciate that. And like I said, I've said this before, I appreciate the friendship that you and I have and then all of your support, along the way. I mean, I would not be having the success I'm experiencing right now if it wasn't for you. One, for you, making suggestions, but two, also for coming on here and talking to me. And, it's
not me, man. You get crazy good guests. Like you're so good at it, and you've been doing that hard work for so long. Great guests, and you approach it, and I think that people are happy to come talk to you because you're always a good faith actor. You are very curious, and you're very knowledgeable, and those things make it so that people who are willing to be on a podcast are excited to be on yours.
Well, I appreciate the kind words, and I look forward to our next conversation and keep continuing to follow your work, and I can't wait for that conversation with you guys and Frank.
Yeah, coming on Friday. Awesome. Well, thanks, Mike.
Mic drop.